The blade went in for the 7th time. March 11th, 1945. Sing Sing Prison, D-Block Corridor. 2:17 p.m. Bumpy Johnson was on the ground, blood spreading across the concrete like spilled paint. 3 Italian prisoners stood over him: Tony the Blade Marquez, Vincent Callo, and Sal Romano. All of them breathing hard. All of them gripping shivs they had sharpened for weeks in the machine shop. 7 stabs. Abdomen, chest, back, lung, each one placed to kill. The corridor went silent. 60 inmates watched from their cells. Guards ran toward the scene, whistles, screaming. But for one frozen moment, everyone stared at Bumpy Johnson, lying in a pool of his own blood. His prison uniform soaked through, his breathing shallow and wet. Tony leaned down and whispered in Bumpy's ear, "Luciano sends his regards. Harlem's ours now." Bumpy's eyes were open, still conscious. His lips moved, trying to form words, but only blood came out. He coughed, a horrible gurgling sound that made even hardened criminals look away. Tony laughed, stood up, and wiped his shiv on his prison pants. "He's done. Let's go." The 3 Italians walked away, calm and confident. They had just stabbed Harlem's king in front of 60 witnesses. The guards reached Bumpy. One checked his pulse, hands shaking. "He's still breathing. Get the doctor now." They carried Bumpy to the infirmary on a stretcher, his blood leaving a trail down the corridor. The prison doctor examined him and shook his head. 7 wounds, two vital organs, punctured lung. He's lost at least 3 pints of blood. He looked at the warden. "I'll try, but he's got maybe 6 hours. 8, if he's lucky." That night, Tony, Vincent, and Sal celebrated in their cells, passing around contraband whiskey, laughing about how easy it had been. They had 72 hours left before they understood their mistake, because Bumpy Johnson didn't die, and the 3 men who tried to kill him were about to wish they had. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who these 3 men were. Tony the Blade Marquez was the leader, 34 years old, a made man in the Luciano family, doing 15 years for armed robbery. Inside Sing Sing, Tony was royalty protected, feared. He had killed 2 men in prison, both ruled self-defense. The Italian mob owned enough guards to make sure Tony's story was always believed. Vincent Callo was the muscle, 6'3", 240 pounds, former boxer, doing 20 years for manslaughter. In 3 years inside, Vincent had put 7 men in Sing Sing's infirmary. Nobody messed with Vincent. Sal Romano was the quiet one, reliable, doing 12 years for extortion. He worked in the prison laundry, kept his head down, followed orders. When Tony and Vincent needed a 3rd man they could trust, Sal was the obvious choice. These weren't random criminals. These were professional killers, and they had stabbed Bumpy Johnson 7 times with surgical precision. Except they made one critical error. They assumed 7 stabs would be enough. Bumpy had been walking from the library back to his cell. Down Dan Schufen PM shift change. The corridor was full of inmates, but empty of guards. Tony stepped out. Vincent and Sal flanked him. 3 men blocking Bumpy's path. Nobody helped. This was prison justice. "You know why we're here," Tony said, pulling out his shiv. Bumpy's voice was quiet. "Luciano's scared of a man in a cage." "Luciano's smart," Tony said. "You're a problem. We're solving it." Dane didn't give Bumpy a chance to fight back. Vincent grabbed him from behind. Sal came from the side. Tony went for the kill. First, stabbed abdomen. Second chest. Third back, between the ribs. Bumpy dropped to his knees. 4th shoulder. 5th side. 6th back, again. Bumpy collapsed forward onto the concrete. Tony leaned down and delivered the 7th stab straight into Bumpy's back, angled toward the lung. "Harlem's ours now," he whispered. Then they walked away. Dr. Harrison worked on Bumpy for 3 hours, stitching wounds, stopping bleeding wherever he could. He should already be dead, Dr. Harrison told the warden, but he won't last the night. They moved Bumpy to the hospital wing. Hour 1, unconscious. Breathing, labored. Skin, gray. Hour 6, still unconscious. Heart, still beating. Hour 12, Bumpy opened his eyes. Couldn't speak, but conscious. Hour 24, Bumpy was still alive. Tony was getting nervous. He had heard Bumpy was still breathing, but he reassured himself. 7 stab wounds, punctured lung. The doctor said he would die. Vincent and Sal weren't worried. They were protected by Italian mob power. They had no idea what was coming. Here's what they didn't understand about Bumpy Johnson. Being weak and looking weak are not the same thing. Bumpy lay in that hospital bed, barely able to breathe, but his mind was working. And in Sing Sing, Bumpy had something the Italians didn't respect from the invisible people. The black porters, kitchen workers, laundrymen, janitors. For 18 months, Bumpy had treated them like human beings. Now, lying in that hospital bed, he called in those debts. A porter named James visited Bumpy at hour 36. Bumpy whispered something. James nodded and left. Later, Vincent was walking down the metal stairs from the 3rd tier. Normal routine. He had done it 1,000 times. This time, as he reached the middle of the staircase, his foot hit something. Industrial grease spread across 3 steps, invisible unless you were looking for it. Vincent's feet went out from under him. He tumbled down 20 metal stairs. His body struck every step back, head, spine slamming against steel edges. The sound echoed through the entire cell block. Then silence. Then Vincent started screaming. Guards rushed over. Vincent lay at the bottom of the stairs, his legs bent at impossible angles. Worse than the pain, he couldn't feel them. I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs. The prison doctor arrived and examined him. His face went pale. Spinal cord damage. Severe. He's paralyzed from the waist down. Vincent kept screaming. Fix it. Fix it. Can't, the doctor said quietly. The damage is permanent. You'll never walk again. Vincent Callow 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle. Former boxer. The man who'd put 7 inmates in the hospital would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. In prison, where a wheelchair meant vulnerability. Helplessness, where you couldn't run, couldn't fight, couldn't defend yourself. A life sentence inside a life sentence. Sal was working his shift in the prison laundry. Operating the industrial press-a-massive machine that flattened prison uniforms. Sal was being careful. He'd used this machine for 8 months without incident, but this time, as he fed his sheet through the rollers, his hand got caught. Not accidentally. A laundry worker named Marcus had disabled the safety release, so when Sal's hand went in, the machine didn't stop. The rollers crushed his hand. The sound of breaking bones was audible over the machine's grinding. Sal screamed. Guards shut down the machine, pulled his mangled hand out. Every finger crushed beyond recognition. Bone fragments. Pulverized flesh. Dr. Harrison examined it in the infirmary and shook his head. The damage is too severe. We need to amputate. Just the hand. Sal asked, voice shaking. I'll try, the doctor said. But if infection sets in, he didn't finish. 3 days later, the infection spread. Gangrene black flesh creeping up Sal's arm despite the antibiotics. Dr. Harrison had no choice. He amputated Sal's entire right arm at the shoulder. Sal Romano woke up from surgery with 1 arm. In prison, where you needed 2 hands to defend yourself, to work, to eat, to survive. A 1-armed man in Sing Sing was helpless at the mercy of everyone around him. Tony was eating breakfast in the mess hall. Oatmeal, same thing, every morning. But this morning, as he swallowed, something went wrong. The oatmeal went down the wrong pipe. Tony started choking, gasping, his face turning red, then purple. Guards rushed over, performed the Heimlich once, twice, 3 times, nothing. Tony collapsed to his knees, clawing at his throat, eyes bulging. A guard tried again 4 times, 5 times. Finally, the blockage cleared. Tony gasped, sucked in air, and collapsed. His heart had stopped. Get the doctor. Dr. Harrison arrived, running CPR, chest compressions. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes without oxygen. Finally, Tony's heart restarted. He was breathing, but his eyes, they were open, but empty, staring at nothing. Dr. Harrison checked his pupils, checked his responses. No, he whispered. No, no, no. The warden arrived. Is he alive? His body is alive, Dr. Harrison said quietly. But his brain, he went without oxygen for 4 minutes. That's too long. The damage is he couldn't finish. Tony Marquez was breathing. His heart was beating. But nobody was home. Brain death. Permanent vegetative state. Tony's eyes were open, but he couldn't see. His mouth moved, but he couldn't speak. He couldn't think, couldn't understand, couldn't do anything except breathe and stare. They put him in a wheelchair, fed him through a tube, changed his clothes when he soiled himself. And every day they wheeled him into the mess hall for meals. Every inmate in Sing Sing could see him, Tony the Blade. Marquez, the man who'd killed Bumpy Johnson's, sitting in a wheelchair, drool running down his chin, eyes vacant and empty, a living corpse. A reminder of what happens when you stab Bumpy Johnson and don't finish the job. Hour 70-2, Warden Miller walked into the hospital wing. Bumpy Johnson was sitting up in bed, reading, still bandaged, but alive. Johnson, the warden said. I need to talk to you. Bumpy looked up. Warden, 3 men, the warden said. The same 3 who stabbed you. Vincent Calla paralyzed for life. Sal Romano lost his entire arm. Tony Marquez brain dead, vegetable. All within 72 hours. It's terrible, Bumpy said. Prison's a dangerous place. You did this, the warden said. I've been in this bed for 3 days, dying. Remember? I know you did this. I can't prove it, but I know. Bumpy set down his book. Warden, let me tell you something. Those 3 men stabbed me 7 times. They tried to kill me. They almost did kill me. And you know what the worst part was? Not the pain, not the blood. The worst part was lying on that floor, bleeding out, knowing they thought they'd won. He paused, but they made a mistake. They assumed 7 stabs was enough. They assumed I'd die. They assumed wrong. Now, Vincent will never walk again. Sal will never use his right arm again. And Tony's body is alive, but Tony's gone forever. He's a vegetable. He'll spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, drooling, staring at nothing, while everyone who sees him remembers what happens when you try to kill someone and fail. The warden stared. You destroyed 3 men. I didn't do anything, Bumpy said quietly. But if I had, I'd say this. They tried to take my life. I didn't take theirs. I took something worse. I took their dignity, their strength, their future. Death would have been mercy. What they got, that's justice. This ends here, Johnson. It already ended, Warden, 3 days ago. Tony Marquez lived for 17 more years. Every single day in a wheelchair. Every single day fed through a tube. Every single day staring at nothing with empty eyes. Inmates walked past him in the mess hall and whispered, "That's what happens when you touch Bumpy Johnson." Vincent Calla served his full sentence 20 years in a wheelchair. Never walked again. Released in 1965, dependent on his family for everything. Bitter and broken, Sal Romano learned to function with 1 arm. Got out in 1953. Tried to find work, couldn't. Most jobs required 2 hands. Ended up on the streets begging. Dead from exposure in 1958. The story spread. through every prison in America. Don't try to kill someone unless you're sure the job is finished, because if they survive, they won't just kill you. They'll do something worse. They'll make you wish you were dead. Bumpy Johnson was released from Sing Sing in 1947, walked out on his own 2 feet, returned to Harlem. Years later, someone asked him about the stabbing. 7 times, Bumpy said, quietly. They stabbed me 7 times. And you know what? If they'd stabbed me 8, I probably would have died. But they stopped at 7, and that was their mistake. What happened to them was brutal, the interviewer said. What they did to me was brutal, Bumpy said. I just made sure the punishment fit the crime. 7 stabs, 3 destroyed lives. That's not revenge. That's mathematics. In Sing Sing, they still tell the story. Still wheel Tony's wheelchair past the cells during meals. Still use Vincent and Sal as cautionary tales. The lesson is simple. You can stab Bumpy Johnson 7 times. But unless the 7th one stops his heart, he's going to wake up. And when he does, you won't die. You'll wish you had. If this story hit you, smash that subscribe button. We're telling the Bumpy Johnson stories about real consequences. It's about justice that's worse than death, about the difference between mercy and revenge. Drop a comment. Was this justice, or did Bumpy go too far? Hit that notification bell, because next week, the story of how Bumpy stopped Malcolm X's assassination with a single look. No words, just one look that made for Hitmen walk away. Remember, Harlem didn't need superheroes. They had Bumpy Johnson, and Bumpy taught the world that sometimes letting someone live is the cruelest punishment of all.